Millionaire found a little girl freezing in the snow. The truth shattered him. Her tiny voice cracked through the storm. I sang bad today. Nobody gave me money. If I go home, they'll beat me. In the middle of Boston's glittering winter night, a billionaire stepped out of his glass tower and saw her, a 6-year-old girl, barefoot in the snow, face pressed to a cold brick wall. A torn hat, the only shield between her and the storm. He froze, torn between his haunted past and the cruelty before his eyes. What would you have done in his place? Welcome to Emotional Echoes, a channel where emotions come alive and every story leaves a lasting echo in your heart. Please subscribe to Emotional Echoes channel. Help us reach 1,000 subscribers so more souls can feel these stories. Stay with my video till the very end and let me know where you're watching from so I can see how far this story spreads. Now, let me tell you what happened that night. Boston shimmered with winter wealth, towers glowing above streets buried in snow. David Anderson left a glass tower behind, his polished shoes clicking against the frozen sidewalk. He had fortune, power, everything a man could buy. Yet he carried the silence of a widower who had buried both wife and daughter in a single accident 5 years before. Then he saw her, a little girl pressed against a brick wall, ribs sharp beneath a thin dress, her bare feet sunk into slush that stung like knives. A torn wool hat slid over tangled hair, and she trembled as if the storm itself would swallow her whole. She looked less like a child than a shadow fighting not to vanish. David bent down, his breath misting in the air, his voice low and cautious. "Why are you here, sweetheart?" She turned her face, lips blue, eyes too old for her small body. "I sang bad today," she whispered. "Nobody gave me money. If I go home, they'll beat me." The words split him open deeper than the cold ever could. In her voice he heard echoes of his daughter's laughter, once crowned by a pink hat, lost forever in twisted metal and sirens. Now another child stood before him, punished not by fate, but by cruelty. In that moment, wealth and sorrow collided, and David felt a choice rising heavy in his chest. Walk away or step into the storm with her. David knelt in the snow, pulling the coat tighter around the girl's fragile body. Her lips trembled as she tried to speak, each word shaking loose from fear. "I have to sing and dance," she whispered. "If I do not bring money, there is no dinner. They say I am nothing if I cannot make them proud." David's throat tightened, his chest burning with anger he could barely contain. He lifted her hands and saw cracked skin, tiny fingers stiff from the cold, and the sight nearly broke him. "Who told you that?" he asked, his voice shaking between rage and sorrow. The little girl's eyes darted upward, wide and wet, then quickly fell again. "Uncle Tom, Aunt Grace. They say I am useless unless I earn for them." The names struck David like a lash. Tom, Grace. He let them echo in his mind, feeling the weight of cruelty behind each syllable. His jaw clenched, fury rising as he imagined faceless adults turning this small child into their tool. Grief swelled inside him too, the memory of his daughter colliding with the reality before him. He had failed once, but staring into Lily's frightened eyes, he swore he would not fail again. David pulled off his heavy coat and wrapped it around the girl's shaking body, tucking the edges close under her chin. She stiffened at first, her eyes darting with panic, as if she expected punishment for accepting kindness. He bent lower, whispering gently that she was safe, then lifted her into his arms. Her weight was so light it made his chest ache, as though he was carrying both her and the ghost of the child he had once lost. As he stepped back into the street, the storm raged harder. Through frosted windows he glimpsed glowing rooms where families gathered around tables, laughter muffled but still audible through the glass. He thought of the cruel irony. While others sat in warmth and comfort, this little girl had been left to freeze alone, punished for not performing well enough to earn her place inside. Rage burned in him, but grief pressed harder, reminding him of the night his own daughter had slipped from his arms forever. He tightened his hold, the memory almost suffocating. Not again, he told himself. Not another child lost while he stood powerless. He felt Lily shudder against his chest, her small hands clinging to the torn hat, still terrified of what might come next. He walked faster, past the blur of neon and snow, past strangers who glanced but never stopped, heading straight for the hospital. The automatic doors opened with a hiss, and for the first time that night, he allowed himself to believe he had chosen differently. He had not walked away. The emergency room was bright and sterile, yet Lily shivered harder under the fluorescent lights than she had in the snow. A nurse eased off David's coat and gasped when she saw the bruises layered across the child's thin body. The doctor pressed gently on her ribs and frowned at the uneven rise beneath his hands, noting fractures that had healed crooked without any care. David stood close, his fists tightening as each injury was revealed. Purple welts streaked her back, thin lines that told of belts or cords used with cruel precision. Her arms bore fading bruises in the shape of fingers, and her ankles showed red marks where ropes had cut the skin. He could hardly breathe as the evidence of pain multiplied before his eyes. When asked quietly, Lily dropped her gaze and whispered, "Sometimes they put me in the basement with no light. They say rats will come if I make noise or disobey." Her voice was flat, as if she had learned to tell the truth without expecting rescue. David felt his chest burn, his anger rising sharp and raw. "This is not discipline," he said, his voice shaking. "This is torture." A social worker entered, clipboard in hand, her tone clipped but cautious. She explained that the family had always claimed the child was imaginative, prone to exaggeration, difficult to manage. David snapped that bruises did not lie, scars did not invent themselves. Still, the worker hesitated, caught between procedure and the horror unfolding in front of her. David looked at Lily, her small body swallowed by a hospital gown, and he swore silently that no system would turn its back on her again. The waiting room door burst open, and Tom stormed in with Grace right behind him, their voices cutting through the sterile quiet of the hospital. Tom's face was flushed with rage as he jabbed a finger at David, accusing him of stealing their niece. Grace's eyes were cold, her smile sharp and false, as if she had rehearsed this confrontation. She marched toward Lily, grabbing the child's hand with a grip so tight the girl winced. "Tell them you fell," Grace hissed, her words dripping with menace. "You tell them right now or you'll regret it when we get home." Lily's body crumpled with fear, her sobs breaking free as she tore her hand away and buried her face against David's chest. David crouched down, holding her close as she clung to him, trembling. "Please don't make me go back," she cried, her voice so broken that even the nurses nearby froze. He rose slowly, placing himself between Lily and the two adults, his presence towering and unyielding. His voice was low but deadly certain as he stared them down. "Over my dead body." The words hung in the air like a blade, silencing the room. Tom lunged forward, but a nurse stepped in and threatened to call security. Grace's smile slipped, her mask cracking into a snarl. David didn't flinch. He stood firm, shielding the child with every ounce of resolve he had, and in that moment it was clear he would fight anyone, even the whole world, to keep her safe. The courtroom felt colder than the storm that had brought Lily into his life. Cameras lined the back wall, reporters whispering, their pens ready to turn a child's suffering into headlines. David sat stiff in his suit, aware that every move he made, every glance at Lily, was being judged not just by the court, but by an audience waiting to doubt him. Across the aisle, Tom and Grace leaned in close to their attorney, a sharp man in a tailored suit who thrived on spectacle. He painted David as a manipulator, claiming a billionaire desperate to polish his image after tragedy had staged a rescue for sympathy. Murmurs rippled through the room, some jurors narrowing their eyes, others glancing skeptically toward David, as if the cruelty Lily endured mattered less than the narrative spun around it. The lawyer's voice rose, cutting through the chamber. "Are you not simply trying to replace the daughter you lost, Mr. Anderson?" The question pierced David's chest, dragging him back to the wreckage of twisted metal and the last breath of his child. His hands shook, but he lifted his head, voice breaking yet steady. If saving Lily means replacing my daughter, then yes, I will do it 1,000 times. For a moment, silence pressed heavy over the room, broken only by the scratching of reporters' pens. Tom smirked. Grace's lips curled, as though they believed doubt had already poisoned the court. David sat straighter, but inside, he felt the weight of a system built to question him, while a child's bruises begged for truth. Surrounded by suspicion, he realized this was more than a legal battle. It was a fight to prove compassion could not be twisted into crime. David left the courthouse with anger burning through his veins, but he knew rage alone would not save Lily. The next morning, he walked into a modest office lined with shelves of worn legal books, where Amelia Brooks rose to greet him. She was younger than he expected, mid-30s, her hair pulled back, eyes sharp with resolve, yet softened by compassion. David saw in her not just a lawyer, but someone who had carried other children's battles on her shoulders. Amelia listened without interrupting as he laid out every detail, her pen moving fast across the page. When he finished, she leaned forward, her voice calm but steady, promising they would not let Lily's story be buried under lies. Together they gathered evidence, photographs of bruises, medical reports of untreated fractures, and neighbors willing to testify they had seen the girl barefoot in the snow. Every piece of proof became a brick in the wall Amelia was building to protect Lily. At the center of it all lay Lily's crayon drawing on Amelia's desk. A black square for the basement, a door with a heavy lock, a small girl crying in the corner. David's throat tightened as he stared at it, but Amelia touched the page gently, her voice soft. Sometimes a child's drawing tells more truth than 100 testimonies. Her words carried both steel and tenderness, the balance of a fighter and a protector. With her by his side, David felt, for the first time, that they had a chance. The courtroom was packed, the air so heavy it felt like even the walls were listening. Witness after witness stepped forward. The doctor spoke of untreated fractures. The nurse described welts across Lily's back, and a neighbor admitted he had seen her barefoot in the snow more than once. Each testimony was like a blade cutting through the silence. Yet Tom sat seething, his fists clenched, eyes darting with rage. Finally, he exploded. "She's lying," he shouted, his voice echoing off the polished wood. "She just wants pity. She always lies for attention." Grace nodded sharply beside him, her lips twisted into a thin smile. The judge's gavel cracked against the bench, but Tom kept shouting, his face red, spittle flying, as if his fury alone could bury the truth. The room stirred with unease, jurors shifting, reporters scribbling faster. Then the judge called Lily forward. The little girl rose slowly, clutching the torn hat against her chest, her small body trembling. Every eye in the room followed her steps to the stand. She looked at Tom once, then dropped her gaze quickly, her lips pressed tight. When she spoke, her voice came like a whisper torn from the wind. "I only ever wanted a song, not pain. My uncle and aunt gave me darkness. Mr. David gave me light." The words hung in the air, fragile, yet unshakable. Tom froze, his rage caught in his throat. Grace's smile slipped, her face paling under the weight of silence. No one moved, no one breathed. In that stillness, it became clear. The smallest voice in the room carried the greatest truth. The judge's voice rang clear and final. Tom and Grace were stripped of all guardianship rights and ordered to face prosecution. The gavel's echo carried a weight that silenced even their fury. All eyes shifted to David as the court granted him temporary guardianship of Lily, ensuring she would never again be forced back into the cold. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed and microphones crowded, but David focused only on the small hand in his. Lily's fingers clung tightly, her torn hat still pressed to her chest. He knelt so she could hear him over the noise, his voice steady. "I will keep you safe, but this cannot end with just us. There are other children like you. I will build a place for them, a place where no child has to freeze alone." Lily blinked, her eyes wide with something that looked like hope breaking through fear. "Will there be more kids like me?" she asked softly. Kids who don't have anyone. David felt his throat tighten as he nodded. Yes, you will be the first, but not the last. You will help light the way for others. Her lips curled into the smallest smile, a fragile spark that seemed to defy the darkness she had lived in. That evening, David drafted the charter for the Light Foundation, a home and refuge for children cast aside. But before any paper was signed, he leaned close to Lily, brushing her hair from her face. "You are not my daughter's replacement," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "You are yourself, and you deserve to shine." She held his gaze, her smile trembling but real, as if she finally believed she had a place in the world, not because she had earned it, but because she deserved it. Spring melted the last of Boston's snow, and with it the shadows that had followed Lily for so long. At school, she was no longer the girl shivering in alleyways, but a child with crayons, books, and friends who waved for her to join their games. Teachers praised her drawings, classmates saved her a seat at lunch, and slowly, the fear in her eyes gave way to something brighter. In David's home, warmth had become routine, dinners and laughter wrapping her in a rhythm of belonging she had never known before. One afternoon, David walked with her back to the alley where he had first found her. The brick wall was transformed. Across its length stretched a mural of light, painted by volunteers from the new foundation. At its base, bold words declared, "No child deserves the cold." Passersby paused to read, some smiling, others wiping away tears. For Lily, it was no longer a place of shame but a reminder of how far she had come. She reached for David's hand, her voice trembling with hope. "Can I sing again?" she asked. This time, not for money but for joy. David bent toward her, his eyes soft. "Sing, sweetheart. The world needs your song." Her clear young voice rose into the air, light and free, and children passing by stopped to listen, clapping along. David's heart swelled as he watched her sing, not from fear but from freedom, her laughter mingling with the notes. For him, it was more than a song. It was proof that love had turned pain into hope, that presence had rewritten despair into belonging. For Lily, it was the sound of a new life beginning, one where friendship, safety, and joy were her birthright. Together, hand in hand, they stood before the mural, a living reminder that kindness could thaw even the cruelest winter. From the moment he found her trembling in the storm to the day her voice rose in joy, their journey was proof that love can rewrite destiny. What began as a chance encounter between a broken billionaire and a forgotten child became a story of healing, compassion, and light. It reminds us that no act of kindness is ever too small, and no child should ever feel unwanted. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, and share emotional echoes so more hearts can feel these echoes. Thanks for listening.